shrunk in recent weeks to the Gang of Five after Republican member Tom Coburn quit. So can they negotiate anything that will stick? Senator Mark Warner is a member of that group and joins us now. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. I wanted to talk to you about Arlington Cemetery and all of that in a minute. Let me ask you first, coming off of what Luke is talking about, is it still viable, the Gang of Five? You're not meeting this week, but the Senate is technically not in session other than pro forma. But what's the action now? Is it still viable for the five of you to come up with anything?
Andrea, it's not just the five of us. Remember, we had 64 senators, 32 Democrats, 32 Republicans a number of weeks ago say, stick at this. We are sticking at this. We think that the way to avoid the kind of political brinksmanship and showmanship that's going to go on in the House this afternoon, it's a little curious. They scheduled this kind of phony vote after the markets will close, so hopefully it won't have any immediate effect on the markets. But I think the only way we're going to find our way out of this is with a bipartisan plan where everything gets put on the table, where yes, we have major spending cuts, yes, we take on the entitlement programs, but that we also take on defense spending, and through reform of our tax code we find ways to generate additional revenues. That was the framework of the Simpson-Bowles presidential report. That's the framework that we're still working on, and frankly I think you're going to see a lot broader group than a group of five be involved in this process in the coming weeks.
I know how hard you've been working on this, you and your Republican colleagues, but you had Eric Cantor from the House side on Face the Nation this weekend saying that everything's on the table, but not taxes. Now, everything can't be on the table if taxes aren't also on the table, correct?
Well, I think one of the challenges with Congressman Ryan's plan was when he walled off defense spending and when he walled off all revenues, where did he end up going? Well, he went to a plan on Medicare that didn't get much response. He ended up also dramatically cutting back on education, infrastructure, research and development, all things that I think anyone would say any growing country in the 21st century has to have some key investments in. He cut those back by about three-quarters of every dollar they spent on those have been cut back. That's way too aggressive. So I think you've got to find ways through tax reform. What we're talking about is actually lowering rates, but generating more revenues by off some of the tax expenditures and tax breaks that exist in the code.
Now, Senator, I wanted to ask you about Arlington Cemetery. You wrote a letter to the Secretary of the Army, and I mean, it is beyond shocking what we've uncovered, what the Washington Post really in its investigative reporting uncovered was taking place in Arlington with graves unmarked, not digitized, urns standing on shelves, misplaced. And in your letter, you indicate that you have not seen any progress. Right. What is the status of that?
Well, Andrea, what was remarkable was, as we dug into this, we found that there was basically no record keeping. They used to keep the records on 3x5 cards, and you were one fire or, frankly, one spilled cup of coffee away from destroying the records on our most hallowed ground. So we got a whole group of companies to come in for free, no cost to the taxpayer, and give the Army a plan on how they could sort through, create a modern record-keeping system, put in place procedures that would make sure that this kind of embarrassment never happened again. We presented this plan. It's been months and months. We've gotten basically nothing back from the Army in terms of other than incremental improvements. And we said, you know, we shouldn't have to live through, and Americans across the country shouldn't have to live through another Memorial Day weekend where these kind of problems aren't fixed.
And Senator, finally, you still haven't heard from them, or have they gotten back to you? Or
no, listen, what they reported back, they have not reported back to me. They've made some small strides forward, but we put together for free, pro bono, some of the world's best companies, tech companies coming in, gave them a whole plan on how they could move forward. We're talking about 300,000 records. It ought to be able to put in a 21st century way, and I'm very disappointed with the Army's failure to respond back to us, failure to respond to this guideline and this basic business plan we laid out to them. The results so far are not what we in Congress, or frankly every American and every veteran, should expect from them.
It's pretty shocking. We are on it. We will stay with you and follow up. Thank you very much for everything you're doing on this case.
Thank you,
and
Andrea.
Up next, U.S. soldiers have been on the front lines of Afghanistan